You're listening to the Paul Young Podcast.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Young on the Paul Young Podcast. Wherever you may be, whatever time zone you are, whatever time of day or night it is, welcome. From the mailbag today, and this is an email from Chris, and I've gotten his permission, like I try to do every single time, unless I absolutely don't remember, but I think I do every single time. Anyway, from Chris, thank you for taking time to open and read this email. I have no expectation for you to respond, as I see myself as already being significantly in your debt. It is my deepest hope that in some way the story I relate below may encourage you and express a small piece of my thanks for saying yes when following that nudge to write the shack all those years ago. I live at the uttermost ends of the earth, in the North Island of New Zealand, in a little farming region near the city of Palmerston North. Although my wife and I are now empty nesters, I am truly one of the most blessed dads in the whole world, with 4 beautiful daughters who are today grown and in their own ways love God deeply. For most of my life, my wife and I have worked in education, which has tended to leave us with space in the summer holidays to do family stuff like camping near the beach and making memories with our girls. For years, my family tented, at a remote East Coast beach called Oputama. I have no idea if I'm saying that right, and I probably am not. Opautama, let's try that, up on the Mahai Peninsula. Today they launch space rockets from the end of this peninsula, but back then it was pretty much untouched, wild, and a bit woolly. One wet and rainy January day in 2008, when all our kids had a bad dose of cabin fever and were driving my wife and I up the tent walls, we decided to pack them into the car and drive up to the nearest town, Gisborne, about an hour's drive north over a winding goat track through the middle of nowhere. If New Zealand is the backside of mankind, then Gisborne is the pimple on the, well, you get my meaning. Following a cafe treat for the girls, we were wandering the main street of this little town, which doesn't take long, and I happened to pass the one bookstore on the main street, Paper Plus Gisborne, part of a nationwide book and stationery chain. However, before your mind creates illusions of grandeur, this little store probably measured 5 meters by 15 meters in total and put the T into the word tired. What grabbed my attention and made me stop as the girls kept heading for the toy store was a tacky homemade book display on the window advertising this new book called The Shack by some pompous-sounding bloke, W.M. Paul Young. When I say book display, this one was definitely not sanctioned by the chain store marketing gurus. The display consisted of a stack of about 30 copies of said book, surrounded by about 3 or 4 A2-sized photocopied posters blown up from the front cover and stuck with blue tack onto an old dusty wooden display case. A handwritten sign written with Sharpie marker on one of those fluoro star cutout thingies read, "You must read this book," in block capital letters of all things. Well, something really whacked out happened to me at that moment. I can only describe it by saying that it was like all of my awareness of the tangible world around me disappeared, except for a picture of the shack on the cover of this dang book that I'd never even seen before. It was like I just knew I had to read this book, no matter what. I can remember being deeply shaken by the experience, and so did what all good Kiwi males do in these circumstances. I gapped out of there, back to my soggy tent on the beach. Sorry, kids, the toy store was closed anyway. When we returned to our home in Palmerston North a few days later, the car unpacked and the kids tucked up in bed, I sat down at the computer to catch up on some emails. Don't even bother asking if Mahia has internet access back then. As is still the case today, most of my emails were ads from TradeMe, New Zealand version of eBay. It just happened that I clicked on one of the ads I was interested in, and would you believe it, that dang book came up on the homepage of the site. Totally uninvited. I mean, how utterly rude. So feeling a bit like Jonah, stuck between a whale and a hard, watery, deep-looking place, I bought a copy. Shit. You might have warned readers that this book was highly dangerous and would cause mental, emotional, spiritual, and bowel upset, not to mention a full-blown case of insomnia. I read it the first time from front cover to cover in one 5-hour sitting, and then because I couldn't figure out if Mac was a real person or not, I read it again. Snot and tears drooling down my face and dripping off my chin. I was undone, utterly. It may help to understand that I didn't grow up in anything that even looked remotely like a Christian home. My dad was a very intelligent man, a scientist, and if you couldn't prove it with empirical evidence, then it didn't exist. Something about apples and trees and falling. At the age of 11, I was totally bored one winter school holiday break and somehow found a copy of the Good News Bible at the bottom shelf of a living room bookcase tucked away in an unopened box. As I had read every other book on the shelf, I picked this one up and started reading in Genesis. Over the next 2 weeks, I read my way right through Revelation, including, the embarrassing bits in the Song of Solomon and my favorite Bible character, Ehud, who was so fat that a sword plunged into his stomach just disappeared. Yeah, boy. Something about this book struck me. Mostly it was Jesus, who was completely different to what I had been told. A couple years passed, and I started attending youth group at a Baptist church in North Canterbury, South Island, where I was raised. Attending the youth group was completely in defiance of my dad's wishes, which didn't help what came next. Eventually, I made some sort of commitment to faith, inviting into my heart the one I had already been talking to with over the past few years. It would be nice here to end with, and he lived happily ever after, but such is not the stuff of life. When revival hit our youth group around 1982, I was about 14. We grew overnight from about 50 kids to about 250, and I ended up being partnered with the youth pastor's older brother to help disciple new Christians in smaller cell groups. Unfortunately, this man was a pedophile, and over the next few years, he repeatedly and sadistically drugged and abused me in his home. Worse, when my parents eventually twigged to what was happening and laid a complaint with the church, the senior pastor decided that the fault was all mine, and that I was likely possessed with a homosexual demonic spirit that would need to be exorcised, publicly, at the front of the church. And because the bloody thing wouldn't come out when the pastor and elders yelled loud, the exorcism was repeated, again and again. Eventually, I managed to grow enough testicular fortitude to escape this church, and I escaped to the North Island where I met my wife. She has literally been the one who saved my life. Together we had 4 beautiful daughters, but as you well know, hurt people tend to hurt people. So I carried all my mess, yuck, and shame into my marriage and family, and perpetuated it. Not with sexual abuse, but definitely emotional and mental abuse. As a teacher, I was good with words, and so used these as terrifying weapons to destroy and control and tear down. I am so sorry. Your book, The Shack, was one of the first pieces that God used to start my healing journey. Listening later to your story in person when you visited New Zealand and hearing you walk from abuse to a place of healing has just been life to me. I will say that again. Your story has been life to me. There are tears falling down my cheeks as I write this. Gratitude to you, for you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My journey has been long and difficult and backwards and forwards, filled with painful growth, like warming your hands when they are frozen. But as you know, He is the one who makes everything beautiful in His time, and day by day I am becoming. To finish off this thank you email, let me share a poem I wrote in the midst of this healing journey. I am an abandoned and haunted house of cards. Oh, for the wind to blow this whole bloody thing down. Except, not all at once, please. I am a gaudy mask at a masquerade ball that now looks tawdry in the true light of tomorrow. And underneath it all are the everlasting arms. I am a polished skyscraper reflecting sunlight, yet harboring untold secrets behind one-way Jesus windows. I'm a yawning abyss of hideous scars with monsters larger than anticipated. And underneath it all are the everlasting arms. I am self-contained, self-preserved, self-righteous, a self-loathing version of what I am made to be. I have lied, distorted, and deceived. I am a pretender, Puritan puppeteer who performs pathetic plays on the Christian stage. And underneath it all are the everlasting arms. I am an Energizer bunny working frantically to anticipate, patch up, repair, restructure, rework, and recheck that my elaborate disguise is perfect to ensure that you really like me, lest it slip and I am exhausted and I can't do life in this way anymore. And underneath it all are the everlasting arms. I've told myself to never dance, never let go, to never let down my guard lest I be seen for who I truly am, except that this whole bloody piece of knitting is starting to unravel and I can't for the life of me figure out how I start to stitch it back again, stitch it back together, or even if I want to. And underneath it all are the everlasting arms. Somewhere, there is this tiny nanoparticle of hope that nudges me, reminding me that I'm on the right track, that spring will eventually emerge from the ice of my 40-year winter. I am exposed and naked and cold, but I think something larger than me offers to cover me and walk with me on this barefoot Legos stepping journey. A wiser man said, "The eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms." I am falling, and the only hope I have left is that when I will land in the arms of the one who loves perfectly, and underneath it all are the everlasting arms. Selah. Hugs, love, blessing, tears, and joy across the miles. I can't wait to sit down with you in heaven and just hug you. Long.